Yes, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a technology leader bridging cloud expertise with real business value, no other than Mr. Mike Mead. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Mike, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Mike, and I'm Chief Product and Technology Officer at an AWS consultancy and service provider called the Scale Factory, based in the UK. I'm based in the UK. I have been working in the cloud space for about 12 years now, and approaching 20 years in technology overall. So I have followed that journey of working in data centers early in my career, racking hardware and plugging in network cables, and sort of transitioned from that to working in the cloud, where everything is virtualized pretty much these days. But my role as Chief Product and Technology Officer is less hands-on. I'm not particularly hands-on these days, and I oversee things like product strategy within our organization, our key partnerships, and working with some of our key customers as well. That's a little bit about me and my background.
Mr. Mike, let's explore the complex realities of cloud migration for executives focusing on hidden costs. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting topic. People have been migrating to the cloud for many years now, and the challenges have evolved over time. But there are still some key challenges that organizations and technology leaders face, and they range from solving technical problems. You might have a legacy system running the data center that has been designed a certain way, and that design, that architecture, the way it's been put together may need to change as it transitions to the cloud, and then that creates a wealth of technical problems and challenges to overcome. But the interesting thing for me, and the thing that most people overlook, and where a lot of the hidden cost is in the people aspect. So, for example, you might have to hire some new staff. You might need to, bring in those skills. You might need to uptrain or cross train your existing team. Maybe there are, there's a restructure needed. Maybe you're going to decommission some products, and build some new systems and so on. So there's a lot of people change in with the technology change. And for me, really, the interesting thing about what I do is the intersection of the two, how the people and the technology come together as part of a cloud migration project.
Mr. Mike, beyond the obvious subscription fee, what are the two, three most significant and frequently overlooked hidden costs of cloud migration that executives consistently underestimate?
So that's a good question. So most of the hyperscalers, most of the cloud platforms, the sort of default model is pay as you go. So you pay for what you use, which gives really good flexibility. So let's say, for example, you run an e-commerce store, and it's Black Friday, or there's a holiday sale on, and so you're going to want some more compute, and you can just go buy that on demand. You can scale up. You pay more for your hosting, and your cloud costs, and then when that event is done, you can scale back down. So that flexibility is really powerful, and one of the big drivers for moving to the cloud. The flip side of that is, how do you predict what your spend's going to be? And it's quite hard to model that. And there are ways of modeling it. You can sort of work out a cost per unit. So you can say, okay, well, for these amount of users on the website, um, putting stuff into their basket and buying things, we expect this much spend on the cloud. So you can correlate the two, and then you can model that. And so that, is a bit of a challenge, but fairly straightforward. That's solvable. But in addition to paying for the compute or effectively renting those servers or virtual servers to run the application, there are other costs as well. So things like bandwidth, you pay for the traffic being served. So depending on your application, it might be quite traffic heavy, and modeling that is quite tricky as well. And that's often a cost that's overlooked when people are modeling. They're looking at the costs of the servers and the cost of the storage and the databases and other systems you might run. But the bandwidth costs and things like that, the sort of auxiliary things are often overlooked. And then the other element, which is something that you don't see on the cloud bill, are the costs of the upskilling, the training. If you have to send a team away on a training course, that can be quite expensive, and things like that. So you have to really consider all those things together, and often that's referred to as the kind of, the total cost of ownership, or total cost of transformation, sort of adding up all of those different aspects and putting them together. If that makes sense.
Makes sense, Mr. Mike, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. How does the ease of cloud provisioning contribute to shadow IT and resource sprawl, and the specific cost and governance challenge does this create for leadership?
Another really good question. I think there are two sides to that. One is when you've got the sort of pay per use aspect, there might be there's an element of almost endorsed shadow IT, right? So if I don't know, I'm overseeing a cloud migration or I'm planning that, and I assemble a team and I say, okay, team, we have this application in the data center and we're going to move it to the cloud, and the success metric or the outcome I'm looking for is this running in the cloud. I don't know, in 3 months, right? Set them a goal. That team goes away and they have this toolbox of cloud, and they've got all of these services they can use, and they can build the application, get it up and running, and they hit the objective. This system is now live in the 3 month frame. Amazing. But because it's pay for what you use, and each service within the cloud has a different cost and different cost model, that team may go away with a sort of technical outlook, and not consider the cost implications of what they're running. And so at that go live date, that's when somebody looks at it and will say, this is actually more expensive than we thought. Why is this? And it might be because of some of the decisions the team has made in that. So it's sort of like you're endorsing the team to go away and do a thing. You're giving them the freedom and autonomy to do that. But there needs to be a bit of governance and some checks and balances. Maybe set them a budget, get them to consider the cost implications of the service they're picking as they go and do that. So that's one sort of aspect that sort of fits into. It's not really shadow IT, but I think it's something that needs to be considered. And then the other thing is real shadow IT, right? Once you're in the cloud and you have access to all of these services, how do you stop somebody in a team going onto that platform and saying, "Hey, you know what? I could really do with this tool or this technology," and they just go and purchase it, and it just ends up as a line item on the bill. So it's quite difficult to stop people from doing that once you give them access to these environments. And again, you can put in some governance and policies and checks and balances to prevent people from doing that, give them some guidance, but also catch it when they do that. And then the other thing, I guess, is like proper, clear cut shadow IT is somebody gets their company credit card, they go and they sign up to a service, and they start using that, and it's completely off the radar of the organization, and that's something that's quite difficult to track, and there's always been a problem in our industry.
Mr. Mike, executives often expect both cost savings and performance gains. Where are the critical trade-off between performance optimization and cost control the leader must understand?
Yeah, that's often those two things. There's a tension between them, a healthy tension, I say. And again, if you're building a system, migrating a system to the cloud, having that pay as you go model where you can scale up and scale down is incredibly powerful, and is a big business benefit, but it comes with a cost. And so it's quite easy for, let's say you have an organization and they do, I don't know, some sort of modeling, mathematical modeling or genome processing or something. It's quite tempting to say, actually, if we spend more money and we throw more resources at this problem, we will make those calculations a lot quicker. But there's a cost to that, right? And most organisations don't have infinite budget, or so you have to put some sort of budgetary constraints on that, and then trade that off against the performance. So there's there's always an activity to look at that, look at the return on investment. We're going to spend this much money. It gives us this budget to provision this amount of compute. We can solve these problems. Do the books balance?
Indeed, balance it, people. Balance. How should executives realistically reframe the concept of total cost of ownership when evaluating cloud versus on-prem or hybrid, factoring these hidden elements?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because as I said earlier, if you're looking at the total cost of ownership or the total cost of transformation of the cloud, the people aspect is a big element. So sort of looking at it and weighing up the cost of, we're going to build these systems in the cloud. They're going to cost this much money to run. Okay, that's one item we need to consider. Now there's the staffing costs, there's the training costs, and so forth. And so you can put together a model, and that's quite clear cut. The other thing you can do in the cloud is you can very easily cost attribute resources to individuals or teams or departments or business units. Most of the hyperscalers support some form of annotating or tagging. So you can tag those resources and say, this is the finance team's cost center here. This is, I don't know, the marketing team systems that they're running, and you can quite easily see in your bill where that spend is going. Now, in the data center, it's actually quite hard to do that because there are often a lot of shared resources or shared services. If you've got network infrastructure, there is a cost to that. How do you attribute the sort of usage of that to different departments? That's quite tricky to do. And again, the people costs can often be hidden in the data center. If you've got people who are there to fix servers when they break and replace components or upgrade or put new hardware in, if that piece of hardware is running systems for 4 or 5 different business units, how do you work out the sort of cost of that and attribute the individual's time, that engineer's time, to the systems that they're running? So it can be quite a challenge actually to sort of model the cost and the actual cost in the data center when you pull in all those aspects of, buying the hardware, the cost of the staff to go in and install it in the data center, and then plug in the network cables, and there might be multiple people involved in that. How do you, track that cost, that the resources for that to, the applications that are running, and then, cost attribute that. It's fairly easy to do that in the cloud, but it's actually quite difficult to do that in the data center. And what you want to do really to get a good cost comparison is get those models so you can say this application costs X to run in the data center, it costs Y to run in the cloud. So often the side effect of that is, often on the surface people look at it and say, oh, this costs more to run in the cloud than the data center. And it's like, well, you haven't considered the cost of all of the staff in building and running those systems, plus repurchasing those servers every 3 or 5 years. Whereas in the cloud, that's factored in. You rent that database instance, you're going to pay that every single month. You don't have to worry about cost of upgrades. You don't have to worry about paying for a DBA, somebody to go in and change the hardware. It's baked into the service cost, so it can be quite hard to compare the two.
Mr. Mike, as a bridging cloud expertise, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
That's a really good question. So In technology, setting long-term goals is quite tricky. The
Mm-hmm.
landscape forever changes. If we were to look back 5 years ago, I'm really trying hard not to mention AI. I always measure the time in a conversation to when artificial intelligence drops in. But if we were looking 5 years ago, artificial intelligence was about, it's decades of research has gone into it, but now it's much more accessible, and we couldn't have predicted what we have now 5 years ago. So it's quite tricky to do that. So I only ever look, just a little ahead. But I think the interesting thing for me in the short term is how these things are evolving. I think we're only just really scratching the surface on this. So um, I think AI technology is going to change a lot of what we do, but in terms of like my role in the day to day, I've been through many transformations, many technology transformations and shift in industry over time. So it's just another one of those. So I'm just sort of considering that. But from a long term, like technical standpoint, I think the interesting thing is the increasing accessibility of technology. Something like AI, as I said, has been around for decades, and it's mostly been mathematicians and a theoretical thing, and is very resource heavy, so very like small applications. But now it's open to the masses. Anybody can go and use one of these systems, and so I think we're going to see increasing amounts of accessibility of some of these technologies. Um, Over the next few years.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Mike, and looking forward for your success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a cloud expertise like you?
I think my biggest advice is going to be don't overlook the people aspect of anything you do. In my career, I've been a hands-on technologist. I've written software, I've done solutions architecture, and there obviously is a large technical element to that. But if you're trying to undertake a big project, say like a migration or some transformation, you have to work together as a team of people. You might be part of a team, you might be leading a team, and the people aspect is huge. Thinking about people's skills and bringing them along for the journey and working together is something that I think is key.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Mike. And what KPI should executives track beyond pure cost savings to truly measure the success of ROI or their cloud migration?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure there's a one size fits all KPI, but what I would say is that um, sitting down at the start of a migration and thinking about the key business drivers, and then using those to inform the KPIs to be able to measure a return is key. So if the driver to get into the cloud is to unlock the ability to innovate, then a metric can be tied to that. And that metric could be maybe in the data center, it takes 3 months to get an application update rolled out to customers. And so in the cloud, what you're looking for is that time to release, time to deploy, reducing. So I'd expect it to be significantly less than 3 months, and so that might be a key metric. Another metric might be um, scaling up to meet an increasing number of customers. So the ability to measure the platform's scalability to reach those business goals is key.
Mr. Mike, as a cloud expertise, can you recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Absolutely. And most people would probably expect me to recommend a technology book, but actually a book that really had a big impact on my career is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And it's an interesting book. Chris Voss is a former FBI hostage negotiator, and so he wrote the book with that background in mind. So you might think, why would a former FBI hostage negotiator inspire you, Mike, for some things that have happened in my career? But I think his approach to how he negotiates has been really really influential for me.
Indeed, highly recommended, people. Mr. Chris Voss book. And Mr. Mike, how does, or not how does, based on your research experience, what is the single most common aha moment or surprising realization executives have after a major cloud migration is underway?
Um, Good question. So it depends on whether you want to uh, look at things optimistically or pessimistically. I think sometimes people underestimate the effort and resources involved in a migration. So sometimes the aha moment is, this is going to take longer and cost a bit more than I thought. And so that's often a big aha moment. But if we assume that a lot of thought and consideration has been put into planning the migration, and everything is on track, hopefully going ahead of schedule, as opposed to behind, then often the aha moment, I think, is that kind of visibility into what's going on. In a data center, it's quite hard to sort of surface information about the sort of overall health of the environment. Right down from the sort of are the servers working correctly up to the application performance. And I think once you move to the cloud, well, for a start, a lot of the server stuff just goes away. It becomes the cloud provider's problem. So there's a complete headache just gone. And so now you can really focus on the application, or whatever you're running in the cloud. And I think that there's just a whole load of baggage that just disappears, if that makes sense, right? You just sort of really focused on the thing that you're running on the cloud, not all of the stuff that you had to look after in the data center before.
Makes sense, Mr. Mike. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in fifth season as well. Comedy 101 in second season, food 101 in fifth season, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love Letters in fourth season, and Movie 101 review, and Music 101. It's in fourth season as well. Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. And please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Mike, if you could advise executives to do just one thing differently during the planning phase to avoid major pitfalls and capture.
Um, I think sitting down and working out what those KPIs are, working backwards. So sitting down, business outcomes. This is what we want to achieve. How do we measure that we have hit our outcome? How do we know that we're successful in the migration? And capturing that before you start would be my recommendation.
Mr. Mike Mead, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business itself?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you're interested in talking about technology, connecting over technology. I'll be super happy to connect. Go if you are considering migrating to the cloud, go to scalefactory.com, and check out our practice, because we can help you overcome some of the pitfalls that I talked about today.
Yes, people will support Mr. Mike Mead because if you support him more and more and more, empowering business to come. So, Mr. Mike, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me today.
More to come, people. See you soon.